And of course, this is where we'll have our intro stuff next week. For real, we're going to get to it next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Dipped in Tone. This is episode 4. I'm Rhett.
I'm Zach.
Yeah. Man, we're 3 for 3. Good episodes. About to have 4 for 4. 100% success rate here.
So far. The last episode, people were saying, I was really quiet and I felt really subdued because I didn't say my son was asleep, like literally behind the camera, behind the wall. He was taking a nap, and so I was talking very quietly. But now I'm going to be a little bit more excited on this one, I think. So,
well, don't overshoot the mark. Don't overcompensate.
Yeah.
Oh man, so what's new? What's going on?
Man, nothing too much. I've been fighting a lot of battles overseas, trying to get my supply lines kind of organized. A lot of the fab houses that make my circuit boards are going through some changes. COVID kind of caused a lot of problems, and then they finally got back up and back to normal. But the main place I use, they're putting all their production on hold, so I'm kind of panicking because I need circuit boards to make pedals, and so I think I found a new place, but it's just I don't handle that sort of transition well. I don't know about you, but when things are different and I'm set in my ways of this is how I make my stuff, I don't want to change.
Yeah.
When I have to change, it really, really, really stresses me out. So
yeah,
that's what I've been going through.
Obviously, I don't deal with, the pedal and supply chain and logistics and all that kind of stuff. But my version of that is workflow for doing this kind of thing, recording stuff.
Yeah.
My big challenge right now is because I work out of a really small space and, it's not actually my space yet. I'm having to constantly all of my setups are temporary. So it's right now I have all my recording stuff sitting on top of an amp road case. And then I'm gonna have to break all this down to shoot a video today. And then I'm going to be on another podcast tonight. Shout out to the Tone Control podcast. I'm going to be a guest on their show.
Cool.
And so I'm going to have to bring all this stuff back in here and reset up. And so, yeah, that is one of the big things. We're getting close to buying a house. And that's probably the biggest thing I'm excited for is not owning a home and having a yard and all the homeowner stuff. It's, God, I'll finally be able to have a room that just stays set up. I can just leave my stuff set up and not have to break it down all the time.
Right. Yeah. For us, when we finally got this place, because I was building everything out of a really small bedroom in an apartment. The fact that I could have a guitar room with guitars and stuff for just having fun set up, and then have a garage where I could actually work was monumental. But even that, for me, I'm terrible at organization.
Yep.
So
same.
All the time when I do live streams, people are can we see your workbench? I'm no, because it's just covered in junk, because I'm really bad about not picking up after myself. I just work, and then I leave. So it's embarrassing.
Yeah. You guys can't see this side of my room. It's literally a pile of Pelican cases and gear and pedals and camera equipment and cables, and I just push it over there and it's just out of sight and out of mind, so I don't have to really stress about it and worry about it. But
right.
the day moving day comes, or the time moving day comes, is going to be a fresh hellish nightmare to try and, even just cable management, dude. Back there, I got back behind my desk the other day. I installed a USB-C hub and everything for my work computer. And I got back there and looked at the mess. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. This is bad. This is really bad.
It's one of those things you think in the moment, I really should have taken care of this when I started putting all this together.
Yeah.
But then you're I'm too busy. I don't have time. And then, when you go to look at it, but I find moving very cathartic, because then you kind of gives you the chance to organize everything and label everything. So when you get to the next place, you can do it well. In your mind, you say, I can do this right.
Can you just come move me then? Because I hate it. I hate it. There are so many things I would rather do than move.
Well, do you know what happened to me when we bought our house?
No.
Okay, so uh we were like we saw so many houses. It was such a stressful thing, and we finally found this place. And literally the day before we were set to move in to this house, and our lease in our apartment was like up, that we had to get out. Um, I like started feeling bad. Had this like huge pressure in my chest, and the seasons were changing, and I thought, maybe it's just allergies. The pollen's really bothering me, but it kept getting worse and it kept getting worse. So I went to like a walk-in clinic, and they were like, "Yeah, that's really weird." And so they checked my blood, and I went home, and then a few hours later, they called me and they're like, "Hey, you need to go to the ER because you might be having a heart attack."
What?
Yeah. So turns out I had what's called pericarditis, where I had like an upper respiratory infection that got to my chest. And when that happens, sometimes your body protects your heart by like swelling all the tissue around it. So your heart is just like being compressed. And it feels like someone's sitting on you. Like it's horrible. But I had to go to the ER. And so I was in the ER for 22 hours. Or
Oh
I was
my
in the hospital
God.
for like 22 hours. I went, they checked me in, they immediately got me in a room, and I just had to wait. And they like, did all the scans, did all the stuff. Meanwhile, Morgan is having to move our entire apartment into our brand new house without me, just with the help of like my family, like her in-laws and like a bunch of my goofy pedal friends.
Oh my God, dude.
It was bad, but
She's a hero,
I,
man.
but I was okay. It's just they were like, "Yeah, you just take some ibuprofen." And I'm like, "Well, can I go home? Like, don't make me stay here and pay for this."
That's manage salt tablet. Take a salt tablet. Be all right.
So walk it off.
Yeah, it's all right. Walk it off. That's crazy, man. Yeah, I never knew that, and I've decided for this next. Well, first of all, I'm glad you're okay. So,
Fine.
congratulations on making it. I have decided for this next move, we're hiring a pedal company. So, or no, Jesus Christ, not a pedal company. We're going to hire Mythos pedals. We're going to hire a moving company. Because Tilly, we've been together for 8.5 years now. And for her, every year almost every year she would move. So it'd be apartment, new roommate, apartment, new roommate. And then we moved in together, and then we got married, and we had a place in Atlanta for a while. So it's like I've moved with her at this point probably 9 times. Yeah. And I'm just done with it. I'm just done. Like, yeah. I've moved in and out of this basement tons of times. I've moved in and out of apartments. I mean, I know it's part of life. Everyone's done it, right? Woe is me, sob story. But now it's like we're 30 years old. We're finally making some adult money, and I'm just going to pay. We actually don't have that much stuff. Right. Believe it or not, like we don't have that much. We have one storage unit and then some stuff here in the basement. So we could do it all in one truck, and I'm just going to have a moving company come in and just do all of it because I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways,
I recommend that.
Yeah. This is not a moving podcast.
No,
this is a guitar podcast. Man. So we got a couple of topics here.
Sure.
The first one I really like. You pitched this. Shat on the shape. Rhett doesn't like guitar shapes Zach likes. That's true. We have very different tastes in guitar shapes. So this is an interesting topic because, first of all, this is all subjective, and we should preface this by saying there is no right or wrong here, okay? This is just personal preference, and what you like is different than what I like, and what the viewers like is different than what we like, and that's totally cool, okay? That sure. Makes us all unique little snowflakes. But you sent me some stuff last week. You're like, "Hey man, what do you think about this?"
Yeah.
It's like,
well, for those that don't know, I'm trying to like purge some gear, and so I've been thinking of like all these trades and things I could do. And every time I see something that could be, potential trade bait, I'll send a link to Rhett, and most of the time he's like, "Bleh."
It's not that I'm not that brash about it.
No.
I'm a little bit more Yeah, it's like, well, that's not my favorite thing, but hey, whatever floats your boat, man. Whatever blows your skirt up, you know. So the first one that you sent me last week, I have it pulled up here. The Frank Brothers. Now I should start by saying, this is just my personal preference. I'm not here to shit on anybody's guitar brand. I'm not here to shit on any builders. I'm sure this is an amazing guitar. I've never played one. We're just talking about the shape here. We're not talking about the tone, the playability, the build quality, any of that stuff. To me, I don't think this shape looks great. I think it's the proportions are just a little weird.
Yeah.
But you dig it. Why do you dig it?
Man, it's because it's different, I think. Because for those listening to the podcast, picture, if you will, a like double cutaway Les Paul, but both of the cutaways are they're pointy. They're almost like mini, like two Explorer horns.
I don't think this looks like a Les Paul at all.
Well, I mean, it's got the waist, it's like, that sort of body. I mean,
it looks more to me, it looks more like if you took the bottom half of a Telecaster, because that's what like the lower bout sort of looks like. It's almost like a Tele shape with a unique top half that has kind of just two sharp horns.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It is a unique shape for sure.
Yeah.
The one I'm looking at is the gold top, has two P90s, lovely tortoise shell pick guard on that. Here's what it is. To me, it's the asymmetry in the horns. The fact that they're off balance and they're kind of pointed almost in two different directions here. Mm-hmm. It's kind of throwing me off a little bit.
Yeah, there's just I've been following them for a while because I remember I first heard about them when there's like the guitar showcase at NAMM where all the
boutique
really
guitar showcase,
small companies kind of like showcase their stuff. I saw because they have a couple different models, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of unique. And then Joey Landreth, because they're I think they're out of Toronto or they're based out of Canada. He was like, hey, have you seen these? And I was like, yeah. And he played some and he said they're cool. And I don't know, that I just like, it's one of those shapes that's just grown on me the more I saw it. Because at first I was kind of like, I don't know. But the more I see it and the more I like, and I think a lot of it too is I follow these guys and it's just like this literally brothers running this company and they're doing things in kind of a unique way. It just gets me excited because, to be quite honest, when I first saw the Novo, I didn't like it. I was like, that's kind of weird. And then after I kept looking at it, I was like, no, I get it,
Yeah.
But
the Novo thing is very polarizing.
It is.
I've seen comments about my Saris J and people are just like, that is the most hideous guitar I've ever seen. I can't believe anybody likes that. And you know what? I love it, but I get it. I totally get it. It's like, yeah, you know what? That's not for everybody. It's a weird shape. It's a funky look. It doesn't look like anything traditional. But to me, the proportions are right on it. Like, I think that's something Dennis does really well. If you look at all of his shapes that he does, they're all unique, but they're proportioned right. And I think that's incredibly hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. How a guitar sits in your lap or hangs on a strap and how it fits against your body is, I would say, probably the most important part apart from the sound.
Right. So yeah, that's the thing. And talking about the Frank Brothers, I love that. Small company, brothers. It looks. I mean, even just by looking at the pictures, I can tell this is probably an unbelievable sounding guitar. I also love the headstock here. They've got they match with the pickguard material. That's a great touch.
Yeah, the headstock, they call it a bow tie, and it looks like a bow tie turned upright. And I love the headstock and I love their logos and all the stuff they do. Like, to me, it's just sharp, but I get it.
Yeah. And I struggle to talk about this because I don't want to talk bad about this is somebody's design and they put a lot of work in this, but it's just the shape. I just can't get behind it, man.
It's a valid conversation. I mean, like there's a lot of shapes in the guitar world that have been around for ages that I just like, I could never, ever, 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 ever see myself playing guitar, like some of the Ibanez stuff.
Oh yeah. Okay. I was going to say, what's your sort of kryptonite here?
Yeah, I mean, like those sort of things I find very unappealing. Like, okay, a more modern, well, modern is not the right word, but a more contemporary example is the new D'Angelico electric stuff.
Mm,
People are head over heels about those things, and I've played them. Like they're good guitars, but aesthetically they do not tickle my fancy at all.
yeah.
So
What about? I mean, because the shapes are relatively traditional. So what is it about the new D'Angelico that you don't dig?
it's little things. There's like this the shape of the cutaway. It's like really like I'm a slave to minutia.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like
Sick
those sort of
band name,
things really
dude.
bother me. I mean, and maybe we'll talk about this later on in this podcast, but like I sweat the small stuff, and those things are really hard for me to get past. Like just
Mm,
little details. I'm not a huge fan of like the D'Angelico headstock shape on an electric guitar. I think on a jazz box, the
yeah,
little metal thing in the headstock is
yeah.
like
The
super
little
classy and cool.
decorative, right?
But on just like a 335 copy, it just like I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Um, that reminds me. They reached out to me, and I think I'm gonna try, and I want to try out one of their jazz boxes because I don't have any guitar like that, like a big, a fully hollow single pickup jazz box thing.
Yeah.
The D'Angelico stuff, like the resurrection of that brand, is really interesting though because historically that's been a very, very impactful and popular. Well, I mean, popular, is maybe not the right word, but the original D'Angelico guitars are beautiful, like
Oh
works
man,
of art.
they're incredible.
It's been interesting to see their comeback. I think it's cool that they're bringing the brand back. They are, they're an import brand mostly. They have a U.S. wing, right?
Yeah,
They have
I
some
think
stuff,
so.
yeah, made in the U.S., but I think most of their most popular models are made overseas,
Mhm.
like Korea, maybe. I don't know. But I played a couple of them, and they're good. They seem to be, pretty solid for the money.
Yeah, and they have most of them that I've seen have like matte finishes and stuff.
Yeah.
They do have that. There are some goofy shapes, like the Bob Weir model is pretty out there. I mean, Bob Weir, of course,
Right.
pretty out there guy, but you know, they're just a little off center for me. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. I've played some old D'Angelicos and just like you know, it's one of those things that because most of the time I think when people play vintage jazz boxes, most of the time they're running into uh, Gibson style stuff.
Yeah.
And they're great. Like, vintage L5s, things like that. They're incredible guitars. But when you play a D'Angelico, you go like, oh, I understand why this is so expensive. Because they're
Yeah.
really they're just phenomenal. But
Right.
getting back
Right.
to the topic at hand, I sent another guitar,
And I've got it pulled up here.
the Bartlett Retrospec.
Okay, so now this is a good example of when you first sent it to me, my initial reaction was, "Whoa, no. But now I've got it pulled up and it's working for me a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
Growing on
Now,
you.
I will say, I think this is somewhat close to a Fano design. It was Dennis's version. It was a Fano version of Les Paul. I can't remember the actual model name.
Well, there's what was the SP6? But that was like, no, that's not it.
I think that was the junior. I don't know if Dennis is watching this. I'm sorry for butchering your old stuff, but this is basically like a Les Paul. It's like for people listening to the pod. So it's called the Bartlett Retrospec. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's essentially an alternate universe Les Paul, if you
Right.
will.
Yeah.
So it's got the bottom shape, the bottom bout of a Les Paul, traditional shape. And then it's almost a double cutaway. It's not quite I don't know. Would you call that a double cut?
Not really. It looks like a Les Paul was like left in the sun and melted.
A little bit. It's not quite an offset, even though your initial reaction when you look at it, it's like, oh, it's an offset Les Paul, but it's not because the lower bout's not offset and the waist is not offset.
Yeah.
So it has, it just looks like a Les Paul that's kind of just melted a little bit.
Yeah, a Salvador Dali Les Paul sort of thing.
Yeah.
So Tom Bartlett, he's like like Les Paul, a burst aficionado. I think he
Sure.
refinishes them and stuff. He sells a lot of like replica parts, but the Retrospect is legit made like a vintage burst. I think the only thing he might not use is like the formaldehyde glue for the top, but everything else, it's the same style nitro. It's Honduran mahogany. It's Brazilian rosewood board. It's all like legit mother of pearl from Italy. Like it's as close as you could get, honestly, to a burst, just not in a burst shape per se.
Right. And they're priced accordingly. I'm seeing the prices on here, $7,800.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
They're not cheap. And part of me thinks, yeah, okay, I can understand the shape now because it's very clear what he's going for. Mm-hmm. But we all know Gibson, and we all know how they love to go after companies for their shapes. And so it seems that it's almost like necessity was the mother of invention here. It's like, well, I want to do a burst. Mm-hmm. The closest thing that you can get to a burst without getting sued. And so he's tweaked the shape a little bit, which I can understand.
Yeah, and I think he has made, in the past, he made like more of a traditional looking body shape. But I don't know, like I first saw this in just some like YouTube demos of an amp, the Tex amp, which is, this guy's another Canadian guy. And the Bartlett, they're made in Canada. But like, I don't know, I kind of fell for it because he does very traditional, either gold, black, or a burst.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know. I dig it, but
yeah.
they are pricey.
And speaking of Gibson, now, listen, I'm a huge fan of Gibson shapes. I think the 335 is the best. I think of mass-produced guitars. I made a video about this a couple weeks ago, but I just think the 335 is the best looking guitar out there in terms of mass-produced. I love Firebirds, even though those are kind of crazy, weird shapes. I always get confused on the reverse versus non-reverse. One of them I really hate, and the other one I really like.
You hate non-reverse.
Yes, I don't like the non-reverse Firebirds. Yeah. I like the reverse Firebirds. The Les Paul. No, I mean the Les Paul is just a great looking guitar. The shapes are right, the proportions are right, but the Modern is an abomination. It's astonishing to me that someone in 1958, was it, do we know who designed it, or is that lost to history?
I don't know. I mean, everyone kind of credits Ted McCarty with all this stuff, but he was just like the boss. I don't know if he was actually sitting at a drafting table, like drawing all this stuff up.
Well, according to lore, the 335 was the actual brainchild of McCarty, but I don't know that any other guitar really was attributed to him.
Well, you know what's so weird about the 335, and I think about this a lot. There's the famous story of Les Paul and the Log, which was like the guitar he initially pitched to Gibson, which was a center block, like a 4x4 piece of wood with Epiphone guitar wings like affixed to it, which is basically
a 335.
335.
Right.
So like, it's kind of funny that I feel like Les kind of gets left out of the conversation so often about the 335 when in essence he was the first guy to do that because he played that stupid thing. Like if you've seen it, like it's a real like ugly goofy guitar, but it definitely did a thing that no one else had done up until that point. But very very curious. I don't know who came up with all the actual, like, who sat and drew these things,
Well, the Modern I think is the ugliest guitar ever.
I think the Futura is uglier.
Let me see here. We're going to have an ugly off.
So there was, for those that don't know, when the Flying V in 1958, there was 4 guitars. There was the Flying V, the Explorer, the Modern, and the Futura. And the Modern and the Futura never made it to production. Legend has it that like Billy Gibbons has the only production Modern. He says he doesn't. I don't know. I mean, the myth is they cut him up and put him in the dumpster behind the Parsons Street plant,
which is what they should have done. Kill them all.
I think it's cool. Like, yeah, I mean, explain the shape of the Modern for those
all right,
listening
dude,
at home.
It's half of a Flying V, okay, with this strange, okay, picture a Flying V, all right? Just a direct on-profile shot of a Flying V. Now cut that Flying V in half. The left side is a normal flying V shape. So you have the left wing of the V. The right side, which would be the bottom of the guitar if it was on your lap, is this strange compound curve with a horn cut out, and then a smaller, like, little baby flying V wing. It's just wrong. The whole thing is just wrong. I've got the Futura pulled up here. The Futura looks like a bad Dean copy of an Explorer.
Yeah.
Which, it's ugly, but I can kind of forgive it. At least it's somewhat symmetrical. It's wacky looking, whatever. The Modern is awful. It's just awful.
You didn't even talk about the headstock.
No, wait. I can't. Hold on.
Because the headstock is what people call a whale tail headstock.
I don't have a picture of the headstock here.
Oh, man.
See. Oh, Jesus.
Because it's also like it looks kind of like this. Like it looks like a whale tail, like sticking out of the ocean, only with tuners on it. It's such a goofy thing.
Yep, you're right. Yep. And dude, I was at Guitar Center. This was probably last year sometime. My local Guitar Center usually has a really great used wall. I go in there to check out the used wall, and usually they have a killer selection of used stuff. And they had, I took a picture of it. I'll try and find it and send it to you so you can post it in the pod. But it would have been Henry J era, probably early 2000s. I don't know exactly what year, but it was a reissue. It was like a black, I think it was a V, but it had the Modern headstock on it. And I remember, I took a picture of it and I was like, what in God's name are they doing here? I don't get it, man. I really don't get it.
It's so weird that I like it. I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's just goofy. Are there any guitar shapes that you like that maybe I wouldn't like? I mean, maybe not, but based off this conversation.
I mean, I really love the Firebird, the reverse Firebird. No, wait. See, I still can't get it straight.
Reverse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
the
it's
reverse
fun.
Firebird.
The Firebird's so weird because like it was just the Firebird, and then they made the non-reverse Firebird, and they call it, like, there's no just like Firebird, you know?
Yeah.
It's
right.
kind of convoluted.
I don't know, man. I'm pretty straight ahead on. I mean, we both love the Novo shape, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. But I'm looking around. It's like, I mean, actually, here, let me grab this and see what you think about this.
Okay.
Oh shit. So, speaking of the boutique guitar showcase, Diego Vila guitars.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a unique. Let me get this in the shot here, so everyone can see it. This is a beautiful guitar, beautifully made guitar, but it's got kind of a unique shape, sort of like Jetsons era, 50s, jet age kind of shape. I love this thing. It's on loan. It's not mine, but yeah, Diego builds incredible guitars, but it's a somewhat polarizing shape here. What do you think about that?
It looks kind of like a Revolta Mondata body shape, but with do you remember Italia guitars? Do you remember those?
No.
Yeah, they were like an import brand that made spiritual successors to all the weird Italian guitars from the 60s, and they had all the mega perloid, goofy looking things. It kind of reminds me of that. I mean, but I don't like the headstock on that, but I do like the body shape and the pick guard.
Right. I love the headstock. See, this is one of those things that to me, and now I like it because it does kind of look like something Dennis would have designed, but I like the sort of offset, funky, weird thing. It's got a massive neck on it, which I love. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest necks I've ever played.
The body's killer. Super cool looking body. But yeah, that headstocks can be a make or break for me. Like, it almost more so than a body shape sometimes.
Oh, I'm the same way. Headstocks will completely ruin a guitar shape. A perfect example of this. And another great example of great guitars. I've played them before and they're amazing. The Tyler guitars. Like a Tyler Strat.
Yeah.
I can't do it because of the headstock shape. Just can't do it.
They're goofy. They look like you put a Strat headstock into Photoshop and used a pixelate filter on it or something. It's very all the Tylers I've ever seen in person, because I don't know, makes like normal looking guitars too. But most of the ones I've seen have always been like the ones that are like dipped.
Yeah.
And very weird. That would probably be way more fashionable now than when I first saw them, because now everyone's like hydro dipping their shoes and stupid stuff. I've been on YouTube. I know what's going on.
Oh man. So yeah, that's, the shape thing is it's an interesting discussion. So let us know in the comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube.
Yeah.
What shapes do you love? What do you hate? It's totally cool. Like I said, it's a completely subjective thing, and actually recently, so I've been a big SG fan for a long time, but I just noticed for the first time, and I can't believe it took me this long to notice it, that the horns on the SG are asymmetrical.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a perfectly mirror image.
And now it's completely killed the SG for me. I don't know why. It just, every time I look at an SG now, I just look at how the horns are not the same shape. I don't like it.
I have a love-hate relationship with SGs because I love how they sound. And standing up and playing an SG is like it's a rock and roll experience,
Yeah.
But playing them sitting down, I kind of run into the same problems I have playing a Firebird. I feel like it kind of feels far away. Firebird feels more far away. It feels like I'm playing a bass.
Yeah.
But the SG just sits kind of funny, whereas a Les Paul kind of sits more in my comfort zone. It's so funny. Like, I was so nervous talking about Novo again, that Novos, like, because of their size, would not sit right for me.
Mm-hmm.
But totally fine. Totally fine.
Again, because Dennis designs he designs the body shape to be as ergonomic as possible. I mean, it's really brilliant, like what he's doing. It's not just about the aesthetic of it. It's about how it feels standing up, how it feels sitting down. And I've seen that firsthand because I've had input on, well, I don't know if I can. Anyways, I've seen the design process firsthand, and he thinks about all of that stuff. I mean, he it's not just how it looks on a picture or an Instagram post. It's like how it feels when you're sitting down and playing it.
I think it shocks a lot of people how big those guitars are, because when they actually get to see them, they're like, "Oh, wow!" Because it's a big guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Which I love.
Except for the Solus kind of feels more normal guitar sized, and
the Solus is more of I've got the prototype one here still.
Bragging.
It's almost it's more like a Fender size, like an actual Fender size. Whereas like if you look at a Novo in a picture, you just kind of automatically assume it's the size of a Strat or a Tele or something. It's not. They're bigger. They're way bigger.
Yeah.
So the Solus is more like a traditional Fender or Gibson design.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So let's see here. Transition. This is what you have in the notes. Guilty pleasures. I love some weird things, but what are some guitar shapes, effects, amps, things that you dig? Great for the comment section.
Hey,
man.
Forward thinking.
Got to get that engagement going for the algorithm.
What are some of your guilty pleasures, like in the guitar community as a whole, or guitar effect, gear, amp realm, everything? I've rambled. I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, I don't know if this is a guilty pleasure or not. It depends. It depends on who you are and your preferences and whatever. But I actually really like the sound of a modeler.
Oh,
and
really?
I know it's sacrilege to a lot of players out there, like, oh, it's not the real thing. Whatever, man. Listen, yeah, a lot of modelers sound different than amps. They do. But sometimes there is a thing that happens in a Helix, for example, that's not true to an actual amp. It's different than a real analog tube amp, but sometimes that's real cool. Mm-hmm. Like that sort of digital hi-fi kind of thing that you can get out of a modeler that's way harder to get out of a tube amp can be a really, really cool thing. And I like it, man. When I'm just sitting down here playing by myself, I'll pull up the Helix or the Axe Effects or something and pull up a patch that I've made that's got a real sparkly sheen on it and some like a long reverb and some modulation, and just play along with that, and I like it.
Well, it sounds produced, like
yeah.
You're not like I could understand that, because it's like you're hearing a little bit more of the finished product, if you're
Yeah.
going to be cutting a record or, you know, making a video or doing whatever. That's
Right.
something that I struggle with because like I don't have anything like that. I don't have any modelers. I don't have any plugins to speak of. You know, I just have like my amps and guitars and like a few mics that I don't use. I just use the aux, and I don't even use that to like its full potential. I just use things really dry, and sometimes I think I need to like dive into that world. I honestly I kind of want to get a Helix or something so I can just have that experience
Yeah.
where I just sit down and like I'm creating like music with something that sounds like it could be just like lifted right out of a Pro Tools session.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's definitely technique to it, man. Like the modeling thing, specifically with the Helix. And I've told Line 6 this, that their stock presets are terrible.
Yes.
Like, I'm sorry. They don't sound good. And I feel like a lot of people that judge, like the Helix specifically, they judge it based on, they plugged it in, they went to a couple of the stock sounds, they're like, well, this sounds terrible. It doesn't sound like a tube amp. It's like, yeah, you're right. The stock sounds don't. But if you know what you're doing and you know how to build presets, you can get it to sound really good. Shameless plug. I think my presets sound really good. That to me is the best selling point of the Axe FX 3 is out of the box. It's the best sounding modeler. Like their stock presets sound really, really good. Just straight out. Like I barely tweak anything in them. Maybe a little EQ here and there, and it sounds really good. Now at what is it, $3,000 or $3,200, whatever it is for that unit, it had better be the best sounding modeler out there. But yeah, it's really, really good. So yeah, I would say that's a guilty pleasure for me, man. I it's not all the time, and don't hear me say that I'm pro modeler all the time. I still love tube amps, right?
Yeah.
But
it's a tool.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
And sometimes I like that tool.
Yeah, I think the
Don't
only
at
thing
me.
that I kind of get really, and I don't own one, I want one, and I don't know, I don't even know why. I really, really, really want a crazy like high gain metal guitar.
Okay.
You know, like I don't play like that, but I want to learn some things, and not like I mean like just something that I can like chug on that has really high output pickups and like those sort of things. 'Cause I like that the stuff that like Keith Merrow does and those sort of like instrumental, just heavy tracks. Like I think that's really cool, and that's one of those things that I think if most people like met me and saw my gear, they'd be like, "Oh, this guy just listens to Billy Gibbons and Joe Bonamassa all the time."
He's a boomer blues
but actually,
guy.
like, I love that kind of music too, the heavier stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I always see him pop up on Craigslist. I'm gonna get that one, but I never do. So
Are you talking about like, a 6-string with a Floyd and high output pickups, or are you talking about like an extended range fan fret, super modern?
just
thing?
mainly like a shredder guitar. No, I don't like Floyd's. Like the Floyd's don't do it for me. I like like a more of a hip shot, just a fixed bridge. But like I physically, because of my hand, I couldn't play like a 7 or 8 string guitar like comfortably. It wouldn't make sense. But like I want like a 6-string that I can detune and like just have really high output pickups and just chug on. Because
Yeah.
when I was like 16 or 17, like all I listened to was like Metallica and like Megadeth and stuff like that. And so there's a part of me that wants to go back to that and just
Man, I never had that. I never had that phase. I mean, the heaviest stuff I would listen to in high school was like Maylene and the Sons of Disaster. Do you know them?
No.
Oh man. Yeah. It's like hard Southern rock.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'd listen to like Maylene, but I never really got into the super heavy stuff. I'm not a Metallica fan. I'm sorry. I just can't do it. And a lot of the metal from the 70s and 80s and stuff is just not my thing. So and then more recently, like I've been listening to a lot of different stuff, trying to kind of expand my horizons. And I've been listening to a lot of the modern sort of guitar bands that are really popular right now, the progressive and instrumental bands and stuff. And it just doesn't. I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and he and I were talking, and I was like, you know what it is? there's not enough space.
Yeah.
Like like they just fill up all of the space in the song is filled up by guitar parts and then by drum fills and other, not a bad thing. It just doesn't do it for me, you know.
Yeah.
It's I like players like this is kind of completely out of left field, but like okay, John Scofield, for example. Why do I like John Scofield so much? Because he leaves so much space in his playing.
Yeah. Now they're a heavy band, but they're not necessarily like I wouldn't say they're like a metal band, but have you ever listened to bands like Pelican or Russian Circles or anything like that? It's just heavy, slow, but like melodic and stuff. It just sounds like the soundtrack to a like aliens and space eating people on a planet sort of movie. It's just great. But like that sort of stuff I really dig. But those guys they all play like Les Pauls and bands like Baroness, they play like Fender guitars and like I love Baroness and like that sort of thing. But it's I don't know, like I just have this part of me that wants to play really loud heavy music and like potentially get a fine from my HOA. So.
My version of that is Muse.
Okay.
I love Muse.
Yeah.
Seen them live twice. That's like that giant anthemic heavy revolt rock.
Right.
Yeah, man. I love that shit.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I saw them. This would have been 6 or 7 years ago now in Atlanta. The first time I saw them, they opened for U2 on the 360 tour, and that was epic. It was awesome. And then the second time they came and headlined a festival here in Atlanta, and we saw them. And man, yeah, I loved it. I was so fired up.
They're legit. They're the real deal.
Yeah, man.
Talking about concerts, is there any concert that, like, if you admitted that you went to somebody, they would like say what, or like shame you, but you had a good time? Because I have a concert that I went to when I was in high school that people are like, Zach, what the hell are you doing?
Well, I don't know that people would necessarily shame me for this. I will say I was surprised. So usually every year about this time of year, we have a big music festival in Atlanta called Music Midtown. It's been going on since the 90s. It's awesome. And it's a huge festival. I mean, they get A-list bands coming through. It's a multi-day festival. And this would have been 2 years ago now. Some friends of mine, the Revivalists, were playing, and Tilly and I went and saw them. And we were hanging out after the show, and we were like, okay, well, we're going to head out. And Fall Out Boy was playing. They were headlining one of the stages that night. And so we were like, all right, well, we'll swing by. We'll catch one of their songs, right when they're set, and then we'll get out of here. And dude, we stayed for the whole set, and I will be damned if it wasn't one of the best shows I've ever seen. Like, I was never a huge Fall Out Boy fan in high school or whatever. I knew their hits or whatever.
Yeah.
They kick ass live. Absolutely kick ass live.
That's awesome.
I will go see them again at some point in the near future. It was sick.
That's so funny. The band I saw that most people would say, what? In high school, I went and saw Creed.
Yeah.
Seven Dust.
Yeah.
Finger 11, all in one bill. And
yeah,
dude, it was awesome. I mean, like Creed, whatever, Scott Stapp, but just like they were a good band. Like, they were legit, like talented dudes, especially, Mark Tremonti. But like it was like great. Seven Dust was awesome. Finger 11 was awesome. But I think one of the funniest things I ever, I don't know if funny is the right word, but I saw Lit open for No Doubt, which was No Doubt was, oh my gosh, amazing. But the opening band for both of them was the Black Eyed Peas before Fergie, and they were incredible, like mind blowing how good this band was. And it was at the Starwood Amphitheater in Nashville before they tore it down, this big outdoor venue. And no joke, there's like a covered pavilion part that was closest to the stage, and that's where I was. I was like one of the few people standing up, like getting into the Black Eyed Peas. Everyone else was like sitting down, just like, this isn't what I came for. But they were amazing. And there's a really cool documentary about the original female vocalist for that band, and she was basically like asked to leave, but she was there and just like, man, if anyone's never heard like old Black Eyed Peas stuff, you should like check it out because it's different and it's really good. It's like it's awesome music.
I'm not a Black Eyed Peas fan. They're one of the bands for me that it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Well,
but I've
now,
never heard it. Yeah, I've never heard any of their older stuff.
It was more like R&B, like it's different. Like, I think you would probably dig it. If I played it for you, you'd be like, what is this? I don't know what this is.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like Maroon 5, man. Songs About Jane is one of the best records of the 2000s. And the stuff that they put out since is like, guys, don't just do that. Do that record like again. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, I don't understand what happened. I mean, I think it's just like their fame kind of got ahead of them, but yeah, what a weird transition for a band that was like such a band to go to now just being like some really just overproduced, just making songs in a studio that you don't really even play live. I mean, you just play the track.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Coldplay's kind of done that too, unfortunately. I mean, the first few Coldplay records are like cornerstones for me as far as just amazing records. I mean, The Scientist is one of The Scientist is a perfect song. It's just a perfect song. There's nothing about that song that needs to change.
Yeah.
And then, the stuff they put out since Milo Xyloto, since like 2012, they've just kind of gotten just more and more like, ugh. Dude, do that again.
Do you think there's any band that has been like consistently, on point with everything,
No, I think it's just, I don't, it's part of human, it's just part of creativity, right? Like,
right.
And it's going back to that subjective thing. You're just not going to make everybody happy all the time.
Yeah.
And you can't, and you shouldn't try, right? Like these guitar designers, they shouldn't try to make me or you or anybody else happy with their guitar shape. They should make what they want to make and what it excites them to make it,
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny though, like you see bands, I just feel like talking about music right now, like that kind of let the market dictate what they're going to do. And the prime example, in my opinion, is Weezer. Like I love Weezer. The first couple records, and it's just crazy. Like I had no idea how many like albums Weezer actually had.
Right.
Like go on Spotify, there's like so many records and they're all the same and they're all really like not great. There's a few good songs every now and again, but it's just like, wow, like what happened? I think it like that's a very interesting thing. Like a band that actually still tours and is kind of, I mean, like people know who Weezer is, but it's just a shell of their former self in a sad way.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm sure there's bands out there, and I think bands that have maintained their sort of artistic integrity and continued to make great stuff were bands that weren't together for very long, right? You think about the Beatles, right? They were only together for 10 years.
That's so crazy.
Had they continued on, I'm sure the Beatles would have made a shitty record or two.
Right.
It's just inevitable, man. You can't have hits all the time.
Yep.
What about you? What's guilty pleasures in terms of guitar stuff?
Well, apart from the shredder thing, like, I mean, that's the biggest thing I think is like really shreddy guitars and actually like really high gain amps. Like you wouldn't think that I would like that. So for me, that is kind of a guilty pleasure. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, you should just get a Helix, man.
I know I should.
Or some kind of modeler.
Like, just find one used or something. And
because
I'm sure there's one on Craigslist floating around that I could.
Yeah, because what it is like you could just fire up a couple of high gain sounds in a modeler and have that sort of, scratch that itch of wanting to get a high gain sound out, and then be like, okay, cool, that was good. You don't need to go out and spend $3,000 on like a.
I don't have to buy a Diesel Herbert or
anything
like that. Have you ever played one of those?
No, dude. There's too many fucking knobs on the front of that thing. It's just there's too much. Like I look at them and I'm like, man, that's my anti-amp.
Yeah. The Earthquaker, they had an amp Earthquaker Devices, the pedal company, they had an amp that someone built for them that was just like a volume
Yeah.
knob.
They have it at
And
NAMM every year. Yeah.
like I was like, oh, that's what I need. I just
Yeah.
need more go.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to have well, it wasn't really a rule. It was just a thing I would say. It was like, what was it? If there's more knobs than, shit, I can't remember what it was. There was like a rule that I had. It was like more knobs on the amp than something, and I wasn't into it. But anyway, the point was like the amps that have like the 5150s are like that for me. I used to use one at Rick's studio a lot. Like that was his go-to clean amp, which I never understood because he had a great deluxe reverb and twin and everything. But he had this 5150, like 3-channel thing and independent EQs for each channel, and you could do it. I was like, man, just get a, if you want the high gain thing, Eddie was able to do all that stuff with a Marshall or whatever he happened to be using at the time. I'm not a huge Van Halen fan. Crucify me in the comments if you want to, but yeah, just the multi-channel super high gain and things like, oh, it's got a great clean tone, a great edge of breakup tone, great overdrive tone, great lead tone, all in one amp. It's like, no, it doesn't. It one amp can't do all that stuff super well. It might do one of those things or two of those things pretty good, but I don't know.
I can't think of any. Yeah, like that might be a good thing for people to comment on. Like, is there an amp that can do all of that? Like, I mean, that's super subjective. But you're right. Like, Mesa Boogie is another example. It's like the amps that I have loved the most typically have less knobs. They shouldn't have like more knobs than tubes or something. That maybe.
Yeah. I think it's a good tool, right? Like if you need, in the past, if you needed a tube amp that would do a pretty good clean sound, a pretty good drive sound, and it would take pedals pretty well, yeah, okay, cool. Something like a Mesa, something, whatever. But to say that it's like, yeah, it has, Fender cleans and Marshall Plexi overdrives and does all that stuff. Even the more modern, like boutique stuff, like the Third Power kitchen sink. Yeah. I really like the Third Power amps, but I played the kitchen sink, and it's like, this is a jack of all trades, master of none amp, where I think it would be better to have 2 amps that do like have a really great clean amp and have a really great, dirty amp or whatever.
When at the last NAMM, because you went to boutique amps and did all that thing, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Did you play the Synergy, which is like the new Randall, the new Egnator with like the modules? Did you try
I actually
that?
I have a combo out in the live room right now. They sent me last week to check out. It's just on loan. And they sent me the Morgan module, the AC20, which will actually be kind of cool to shoot it out against my AC20 behind me here. They sent me the Soldano module, which is what I have in there right now. And then they sent me, I think, a Friedman module.
Okay.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, basically the Synergy thing, the one I have out there is a 112 combo. And it's a tube amp. It's got tube power section, tube preamp section. But you essentially have these modules. Think of like a 500 series module in the recording world that are different tone stack and preamp sections from different amplifiers. So you have like a Morgan AC20, you have a Soldano SLO 100, you have a Friedman BE 100, and you literally plug in these modules and you're essentially revoicing that amplifier to be that kind of thing. Interesting idea.
You can have a really curated like multi-channel amplifier that is set to you. It's kind of like having like Nintendo cartridges like right on the front of the amp or something.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. I haven't spent too much time with that one out there yet. It got here right when we were getting ready for the last live show, and I just haven't had time to like really mess with it. It's got a creamback in it, and nice. It's got some cool features on it, man. It's got a direct out. It's fully tube. It's got a foot switch kind of thing. I don't know. I need before I pass judgment on it, I need to actually like spend time playing it and seeing what it does well.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because that's not a new concept, but it is like, I feel like we're getting to a point where technology can kind of catch up with people's ambition.
Yeah.
And when people really want to accomplish something, I feel like the only limit now is like time and money.
Yeah.
because like most tech I think is possible.
Right.
But you know, you look at all that and it's just curious, like, is it going to be so much better than having a Helix or a Kemper, like, you know, behind
That's
your
what I was
shoulder
about
there?
to say. It's like, if I think about this as a player, you know, if I put myself in the gigging, working musician player or the hobbyist player, somebody that maybe gigs on the weekends or whatever, I think I'm just not sure that personally I would pick that over something like a Kemper or a Helix or an Axe-Fx. I understand it. It's like, yeah, it's all tube, right? So you do get that that feel and response. It's a real guitar speaker, like it's a real amp,
Yeah.
right? It's not like a hybrid or whatever. But the Helix, man, specifically, I've toured with that. I've gigged with it a lot. The Axe-Fx was going to be my my festival rig for this year. That's what I was planning. I was planning on building the Axe-Fx out as my go-to, like grab and go fly rig, festival rig. Obviously, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of experience with the Helix live, and dude, it's good for live setting. It's good, and it's a great tool. I just think I would go with that now.
Yeah, people ask me, like on live streams and stuff, if I was going to tour, what would be my setup, and I say a Helix. I've not even played one, but I know, like, I've carried amps with like I've you know, done the schlepping of gear, and like I don't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, the only reason you don't need that is if you're playing tiny little like bar gigs, you know.
Or if you are on a gig, like last year I had the opportunity to do some pretty big tours, and it was every venue we were playing was a union venue, which means that as soon as you pull up, there's union guys unloading all your gear. You really don't have to touch your gear. And in that case, and we're playing arenas, and so in that case, it's like, yeah, I'm going to bring my big amp. I'm going to bring my full rig, because we have a trailer, we have stage hands, we have people there to help you move and schlep all the stuff for you. And I've road cases for everything. And so in that kind of setting, and yeah, bring your big stuff, bring your big rig, but everything else, man. Yeah.
Well, I just think it, like, the one thing I would want to ask is the experience better for you as a player when you have the actual like amp sitting behind you?
Yes.
Yeah.
For a few reasons. One, because you're moving air. When you're in a big room on a big stage, and you can, like, I had my FTR on that tour. I've said it a million times, that amp's loud as shit. But because we were on arena stages, I was able to run it wide open at its, like, where it liked to live, where it liked to sit. And that amp, through that 212, hitting it with a fuzz, hitting it with the different effects, even like your clean sound, there's that sort of concussion, that sort of thud that happens when when a powerful amp is really pushing, the transformers are really pushing, the speakers are really pushing. That's where the guitar and amp wants to be. And when that starts to happen, the amp becomes part of the instrument, because the guitar and amp are interacting, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was really cool. There's also just sort of the tactile element and sort of the psychological element of like, yeah, I've got my amp. I'm like, I've got my thing behind me. But the logistics of it were really hard. Like, we had, I not had teams of stagehands helping me out every night with the changeovers, I could not have had that amp out on the road, because it's casing up, uncasing, patching everything in. Like, yeah, it's just too much.
If you had to have a low stage volume, would you bother? I mean, I know, like, an arena or whatever is kind of, it's not as big of a contentious point, but, you know, let's say you had to just have your head and you had to have the, you know, mic'd up in an ISO cab or something. Would then you just say, I'm just going to bring a multi-effect, you know, modeler thing?
Yeah. I think now I would bring just the Helix or a smaller amp or whatever, just because when you attenuate an amp or something like that, you're just not, it's not doing what it wants to do.
Right.
And the best alternative is using something like the Aux or the Captor X, the Torpedo Captor X. Those are really good options. They let you run your amp. You can run the amp where it likes to be. But the trade-off there is you're not getting the drive from the cabinet, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's really about moving air. It's really what it's about. And if you can't do that, then you're giving up one of the main advantages of using your big rig out on the road. So at that point, then it becomes more about a balance of convenience, ease of transport. Because the other thing too, man, like the older I've gotten, you can really hurt yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, dude, the FTR head in its head case is almost 90 pounds. Yeah. Just the head. The cabinet, the 212, is about the same weight. Like, loading that stuff in and out of trailers all the time, you can really hurt your back. I've almost screwed my hands up where, you put one case on top of another, you're pushing out and it slips and it almost pinches your hand. Like, that is a consideration to take when you're moving your own gear all the time. Like, it's it's not the most practical thing.
When we were flying to England recently, and I took the Novo just in the mono bag, like I don't have a great shoulder, and just walking around the airport with that thing on my back, it hurt my back.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't imagine having like a dual mono case and like carrying a board and like doing all that kind of stuff just night after night after night. I think it would really hurt me. So,
I've done it, dude. I've done it dozens of times. The dual mono bag, 2 guitars, pulling a pedal board, and because I was filming everything all the time, my camera bag as well, right, with all my camera gear, trying to get through multiple airports and connecting flights. And dude, it's just a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's, that's really now, if you're a home player and, just play whatever you want. We're talking from like a gigging, working perspective.
Yeah. I think everyone, you kind of have to take a step back too and like look and see what really fits your situation. Because I feel like a lot of people get really tied into the excitement of like playing a thing, having a thing, doing that thing when you do your thing. But like, keep it practical, because, like I was trying to use a Z-Rec at bar gigs. Stupid. Don't do that. You don't need that.
Right.
Right. So you always have to like keep it in perspective, regardless of how much you love it. I think, you got to be respectful of your audience and your band members as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's something to take into consideration. So anyways, well, I think we about covered it.
I think so. I think we've done a great job. Big shout out to everyone who's supported us on Patreon. We've had, we've hit like 13 or 14 patrons.
Nice.
So we've like covered our hosting fees. So now we're well on our way to be able to buy our first thing suggested by the community for us to love or hate and play. I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know if we'll just like one of us will make a video or we'll like do it in the podcast.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. And we're almost at 1,000 subscribers on YouTube as well. So thank you. If you're subscribed on YouTube, this is the fastest come up of a YouTube channel I've ever been a part of. So
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And now the audio podcast is on Spotify. It's on Apple. I'm going to submit it. I think I submitted it to Google. I'm going to submit it to Amazon now as a podcast thing. So it should be making its way into every outlet, in the next week or so. So
yeah. All right. Well, that's it. I'll be dipped. Episode 4. Thanks for watching, y'all. We'll see y'all next week.